take care of business against your Commanders, Matthew. 37-20. Baker.
Can I do a quick impression of my Commander secondary?
Oh.
Here we go. Here we go. All right.
Oh, man. They didn't watch your teach tape against Lawrence.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Master Thespian.
Yes, Daniel Day-Lewis.
There you
Lincoln
go.
made Matthew
There you
Barry
go.
as
There you
Commander
go.
secondary.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour.
How did that clip not get put on social? A lot of,
I called it teach tape.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well,
how did I not get that? As producer Steven, wherever you are, that should have been clipped for me for
It's
social.
a rare day off.
Yeah.
You do know third string producer Pete is in the chair today,
Backup
right?
producer Pete is his
Yes.
official
Oh,
name.
he has
backup
jumped-
producer. Yeah, no. He's
Pete-
backup producer Pete.
Pete
by the-
Simeon.
He's not Sean Clifford.
He's not.
Let's make
he's
that clear.
Correct. And listen, he's 1-0 in the league. He's my nemesis in the league.
As am I. I slapped him like a grape. You're
Yes, you
1-0.
did.
Did you win?
I'm 1-0.
You're 1-0
Absolutely. On
too.
the back
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Cooper Cup.
Can't teach greatness.
Yeah.
Cannot
No,
teach
it
greatness.
just lives at this desk.
It's worth noting, like the people on camera defeated the people off camera. Well, Lawrence lost.
Oh, God.
Yeah, well, we'll give him crap about that tomorrow.
Lawrence started Donovan Peoples-Jones, so he never had a chance.
What are you going to do?
It's waiver wire day,
Yeah,
by
it
the
is.
way. It's a big one because it's going to be a mad dash, of course. The earlier in the season, the crazy waivers get. We got Back to the Futures to close out the show. Always a good time to jump on some early futures.
We got big injury news.
We got a lot of injury news to go through. We'll
Plus,
recap Monday Night Football.
your
Jets getting steamrolled by the
dude,
Niners.
you're JETSSUCK.
Not great. Not
Wow.
great.
Am I wrong? Am I
It wasn't pretty.
WRONG?
We'll get into it, but
Yeah.
although Rodgers looked great, everything else
Right.
looked bad.
Yes.
Right, which last year was, kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
Nothing from the quarterback, and everything else looked
some
good.
trouble.
You
Their
know
run
what I do real
defense.
quickly, and then we'll get into it. I'm just can I
Got
do
an
a quick
impression for me?
I got another
Please.
impression. All right, here's
Run defense. Give me a run defense.
Here's the defensive line of the New York Jets. Just and anytime Jordan Mason's coming this way. Here, let me just.
You're still standing, so it's not a great
Yeah,
impression.
it's
They were doing it from the turf.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
Yeah, there we
yeah.
go.
You just go that way.
There we
Matthew's
go.
going to hurt himself.
Blowing off the line. It's awful.
Pulling out grass out of the
Oh my
helmet.
God, so terrible.
Yeah.
Hey, they're gonna run. Should we start a run deep? No, just go right on ahead.
It wasn't great.
You've seen the meme of like the security guard that just the
Yeah,
older, larger security guard that's kind of like
He doesn't even really pat
don't
the
even
people
pat
down.
down.
He
Just like whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, that
was the Jets' run
defense
defense.
last night.
You should have hit
1000%.
send on that one. It would have done $1 million.
Yeah, I should
You
have.
would have cashed that sweet check
What are
from
you gonna
X.
do? What are you gonna do? I need a social media manager. I'm dead serious. I need someone to run my social.
You should.
Yeah, somebody out there. Send me a resume.
Ask
Somebody out
producer
there.
Pete.
Huh?
Yeah,
I'll
that seems like
throw
another
straight
good
to
job for
Pete.
Pete.
Listen, here, two things I can guarantee you is that one, if I gave backup producer Pete access to my social handles, I would be fired within a
sabotage
day.
you immediately.
1,000%.
He'd
We'd all be
sabotage you.
fired, but
Yes.
especially me.
Oh, yeah.
I would be canceled within 24 hours.
No, but you know what the weird thing is, though, is that Pete would actually use that and would use your profile to slide into Dexter Lawrence's DMs or something weird.
Hey, Dex.
That's what he would do. That's actually
You guys be better
1,000% what he
this
would do. It would be safe for about a month,
Yeah.
and then I would start getting what? Why are you DMing me?
Yes.
I got all these NFL players being like, "What the hell?"
No,
Daniel,
just Dexter Lawrence.
no,
Just Dexter
Daniel
Lawrence.
Jones,
Yeah.
Dayball, every Giants.
Devin Singletary is kind of like, what's going on here? Yeah.
This is weird.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what would happen with backup producer Pete. Yeah. All right, let's get into this.
Yeah, Roto-World player news. Let's jump right in because we talked about the injuries at the top and how big some of them are. Packers quarterback Jordan Love, of course, week to week. He's not going to go on the IR. It's an MCL sprain, so the worst case seems to be avoided here. Malik Willis will start, assuming Jordan Love can't. Malik Willis just got there, by the way.
Okay, so can I ask you something? Do they hate Sean Clifford? Because I felt like I actually had Sean Clifford in a dynasty league, and I gave him up because it looked like, he's not going anywhere. But it feels I actually gave him up for Jordan Mason. Long story, but what I was going to say is this is like a year ago. I dropped Clifford and picked up Mason.
It's like winning the Mega Millions.
Yeah, 1,000%. But my question is because I thought Clifford looked pretty good in the preseason last year and won the backup job. And now they're like, we traded for this guy that was a washout in Tennessee, and we're immediately 2 weeks in saying, like, actually, he's the starter, not Jordan Love.
The situation's really weird because it feels like it came full circle. They drafted him in the top 150, which was a shock. By the way, Reef Hassan, he does a really good job putting together this thing called the consensus board. He takes every draft analyst in the industry and really merges our rankings together. Sean Clifford, he tweeted that year, was 414th on the expanded consensus board, because not every analyst goes beyond 200
or whatever,
300, 414th. So when the Packers took him, this is one of the most shocking top 200 picks in the NFL draft history. Then he was okay as a rookie that summer. It was like, hey, maybe it's just the Packers. They just get it right every time at quarterback. And then it seems like things really fell apart between him and Michael Pratt this summer, where they trade for Malik Willis, and now they're thrusting Malik Willis into this role. So how he got here was a full roundabout way. But, I mean, listen, if they have to start Malik Willis, this feels like a team that's just going to have to run the heck out of the ball.
And here's what this means, 1,000%. So, like, we're going to talk about the Puka Nacua injury here coming up in a second, but the fact of the matter is that for the purposes of fantasy, if you have Christian Watson, if you have Romeo Dobbs, I think to an extent Jayden Reed, we'll talk about him in a second, you basically have an injury as well. Like, you cannot start Christian Watson. You cannot start Romeo Dobbs this week. You can't start any Packers wide receiver, except possibly Jayden Reed. Again, we'll talk about that in a second, until you see what this looks like. But Malik Willis, in the few times that we've gotten to see him when he was with the Titans, just looks like deer in the headlights, just not ready for prime time. When he was drafted, I believe, out of Liberty, right?
Yeah, out of Liberty.
When he was drafted out of Liberty, Connor, people were like, this is going to be a project. He's an athletic kid, but this is going to be a project. He was not ready for prime time. And again, then the Titans, like new regime in Tennessee, was like, we've seen enough. Will Levis, come on down. And they give away Malik Willis for a song. Now he's starting. So in essence, basically, even though it was Love that was injured, not Watson or Dobbs, I believe it's the same as if those guys are injured, because you cannot start them until we see some signs of life from Malik Willis, unfortunately. I do think what happens here is the Packers go incredibly run-heavy. I think, obviously, Josh Jacobs gets an uptick in value. And I do think suddenly, and we'll get into the running back waivers here in a second, I do think suddenly Emmanuel Wilson, who showed some pop in the preseason, I thought he looked good in the limited time he got against Philadelphia. I think suddenly he becomes interesting in deeper leagues, because I think he's going to get some run. I think he gets double-digit touches in the next game.
Might have to. And maybe Jayden Reed is going to have to run the ball a little bit more.
That's the argument. That's the only thing you can hope for with Jayden Reed, is that they do some bubble screens. They do, Malik Willis, hey, here's just some really quick stuff. Hey, some reverses, jet sweeps, that kind of stuff. Find different ways to get the ball into Jayden Reed's hand that aren't always dependent on Malik Willis, and just also he's going to run some slot stuff, so maybe Willis can just do some quick slant stuff. And like, Reed might be okay. Everyone takes a downgrade. The offense takes a massive downgrade, but Reed might be the one Packers wide receiver that might be okay here, Jay.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of what the market thinks of Malik Willis, right now the Packers are 3.5-point dogs at home to the Colts. This was Jordan Love, they'll be 3.5-point favorites. So it's like a touchdown swing. That's about as big as it gets from a starting quarterback to a backup. Malik Willis is, I guess, something of an unknown. We've kind of seen a bit of Malik Willis at this point, though, and it hasn't looked great. So, yeah, I would just expect this is going to be heavy lean on the run game.
If you lost Jordan Love, stick around. We're going to talk about quarterbacks towards the back end of our waiver segment. So with that, let's move over to the running backs, because obviously this always takes precedent. All waiver recommendations are players available in at least 50% of Yahoo leagues. Just a reminder for this show of where we set the standard. Jordan Mason is available in under 50%. Let's just get that right out of the way.
But if he's somehow still available in your league, he's the number one guy.
Yeah.
If Jordan Mason's still out there, he's the number one guy. We are assuming he is not.
So with that, let's start.
But he's not 100% rostered.
No.
He's not 100% rostered.
Last night was one of the more shocking pregame.
We'll get into that. Yeah.
Injury situations that's led to this. So with that, we'll kick it off with J.K. Dobbins of the Chargers. He is right at the threshold, 50% available. He's got the Panthers, who they didn't look like they could stop a JV team last week, quite frankly. So that's the good news right out of the top. If you're able to pick up J.K. Dobbins, or you're rostering him right now. And, I mean, Jay, he just looked healthy, finally.
He did. He showed insane bursts. Some of the top speeds that he reached with next-gen stats were, I believe the top 2 in the league, him and Saquon Barkley on one of those runs. So that's exciting that we saw that explosiveness. I think the downside would be that, he's in a proper timeshare with Gus Edwards. He had 10 carries. Gus Edwards had 11. But the good thing for J.K. Dobbins is that he had 3 receptions. And it doesn't sound like a ton, but he is going to be the third down guy. And if he's the third down guy and getting half of the carries, in an offense with a good offensive line that wants to run the ball because they don't have any receivers and it's a Greg Roman offense, I think that J.K. Dobbins can be fantasy viable. You just hope that one day he can kind of finish these long runs because he hasn't really been able to do it. He's ran out of steam with the big breakaways against the Raiders. But no, hugely positive for J.K. Dobbins and a great story.
13 touches last week, and that's about right. I think he's going to be in the 12 to 15 touch range. It's never going to be a massive workload. But in games, they do want to run the ball. That was a game where they were beating the Raiders pretty handily. We expect them to have no issue with the Carolina Panthers, especially on the road. So yeah, again, I think there's a limited up. Dobbins had a massive game, obviously, but there's a limit to the upside because, to your point, there's always going to be some Gus Edwards. Herbert will have to throw. They're not always going to be in positive game script as well, and so we haven't seen. We've hoped for a long time since he came out of Ohio State. We've hoped for a long time J.K. Dobbins was going to be a true 3-down back, and we've seen flashes of it. To your point, he caught 3 balls in this one. He had 4 receiving yards. Like, we need him to be, Austin Eckler, he ain't, just yet, right? So we need him to become more viable. But, like, certainly of all the guys that are out there on the waiver wire, he's the one that has a fantasy viable role this week. We'll talk about, again, if McCaffrey moves out, then, Mason's a top 10 play this week, but if he's available. But, like, of people that are available more than 50% of Yahoo leagues, like, J.K. Dobbins is someone you can slap into your lineup right now as an upside flex against Carolina.
Yep. I would expect his average stat line, if he's going to get those 10 carries, like 10 for 45, 50 yards on the ground, 2-3 catches for another 15, 20 yards, and then like a 40% chance at a touchdown, that type of line, which is fine. It's just don't expect like 100+ rushing yards.
Yeah, I mean, again, 135 rushing yards. He had the big long run, and he's done that before in his career. He has that ability. To your point, he seems to always falter at the 5. But yeah, I mean, I just don't want to. Let's not go too crazy because this very well may be his best game of the year.
Yes.
But absolutely needs to be rostered 100%. And to the extent you're starting a Chargers running back this week, it's J.K. Dobbins.
We were not surprised that the Chargers had a split work share in their backfield. We were surprised about the Jaguars, by the way, with Tank Bigsby literally splitting touches with Travis Etienne. Tank Bigsby, unlike Dobbins, he's available in 95% of leagues. Now, they do have Cleveland, Buffalo, Houston, and then the Colts. But 12 carries, Matthew, 73 yards, and quite frankly, just looked the best. He looked the best I've ever seen, going all the way back to college. Tank Bigsby.
Talk about he's not. We're going to talk NFL futures, and Tank Bigsby is not eligible for comeback player of the year because you're not allowed to come back from just sucking. But that's honestly what's happened here is Tank Bigsby couldn't get on the field last year. One of the reasons why Travis Etienne got as much work last year as they did is that they didn't trust Bigsby. Right. They didn't like what they were seeing in practice, whatever. And for whatever's turned around for Bigsby has really happened in a big way. To your point, not only did he look better than Etienne, honestly, running the ball, and he got a big workload here. Etienne cost them the game. Yeah. Now again, you got Etienne's a special player, but the fact of the matter is that if I'm Doug Peterson and that coaching staff, and I'm going back and I'm watching the tape, it's like they had this game. They had that game won. They should have beaten the Dolphins, and they didn't. And a big part of it, honestly, is Etienne fumbling at the 3-yard line or whatever it is. Just somebody got the peanut. I forget who was. Was it Holland? Javon Holland.
Phenomenal player.
A peanut Tillman punch, but great play. But sorry, you're an NFL running back.
Right.
Know what's coming.
You got to finish the play.
You got to finish the play, and so certainly Bigsby with his 33% avoided tackle rate and getting 50% of the team's rushes on just a 34% snap rate. No question to me, Tank Bigsby has earned a bigger role going forward in this Jaguars backfield. And I think what you'll see, we talked about this yesterday a little bit, I think what you'll see, Jay, is you'll see Bigsby and Etienne split carries, and Etienne will be the 3rd down back. He'll be the passing down back.
Yep, and it wouldn't be the most shocking thing to me in the world if Bigsby takes over the backfield before the end of the season. Now, I wouldn't say it's favorite, wouldn't say it's likely, but that's within the range of outcomes. And then for this week, they play the Browns, which on paper, that's a terrifying matchup, Cleveland's defense. Yeah. Cleveland were an average run defense last year. It's just their pass defense was all world. So I think that he should be able to get some work against the Browns. Tank Bigsby had the highest PFF grade of any player on the Jags offense last week, which matches up with the eye test because he certainly looked a lot better than he did last season.
He created his own yards consistently, which is a great sign for a running back.
He did, and Christian Kirk killed about half my teams. It was awful. The last thing I'll say here on Bigsby is just, again, in addition to, by the way, he looked the part, it all makes sense. The other thing is that we talked about this. Again, I keep referencing this, but like I had a nice long sit-down conversation with Doug Peterson at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and I specifically asked him about ETN's workload, and he just said yes. Like we need to get Tank Bigsby more involved. We do not want ETN handling the ball as much as he did last year. That was a little bit too much. It was partially due to, ETN was having a great year, but also partially because we just didn't feel like we had anyone else. So it was kind of due to necessity. But clearly, the way Bigsby has played means they can say, like, okay, great. With ETN, because he's such a big play guy, that maybe less work actually makes him more efficient.
The Tony Pollard route?
Yeah, the Tony Pollard route, that just too much work actually wears him down a little bit. And that, let him be try to get him in space and use that speed.
Our next one here, Jaleel McLaughlin, 63% available in this messy Broncos backfield. And, I mean, Matthew, this is one of the more rare stat lines I've ever seen. 5 catches for 1 yard.
It was infuriating. So I got eliminated in the guillotine league this week because, again, like 18-team league, I picked 18th, right? You know what I mean? And, like, Drake London screwed me. Christian Kirk screwed me. Stafford screwed. I mean, 18-team. It's an 18-team league, and I had to pick 18th. And Jaleel McLaughlin was my number 2 running back, or I had to play him in the flex because of the T. Higgins injury, and so it drove me crazy. Catching the ball. Like Bo Nix couldn't throw down the field, and yet they couldn't block for blank. It was awful, but. One of the reasons why Jaleel McLaughlin was on my preseason love list, one of the reasons why I talked about him as kind of a sleeper is that this backfield, I think, is wide open. Javonte Williams started camp with, it looked like, there was rumors he wasn't going to make the team. He had a better camp as it happened. But again, Sean Payton is a guy who likes to give multiple running backs lots of touches. We know he loves your guy, Audric Estime. But also, Jaleel McLaughlin is a guy that he found last year. He inherited Javonte Williams. It's the one guy that isn't, quote, a Peyton guy. And so the fact that I think what's impressive here is, like, you knew McLaughlin was going to be the third down back. Like, he's a pass catcher as well. But he got 10 rushes compared to 8 to Javonte Williams. It's sort of like we were talking about with ETN, right? That McLaughlin and Javonte Williams, it seems like, at least from the one-game sample, McLaughlin and Javonte Williams are going to split the early down work, and McLaughlin's the third down back, which is like, okay, and that's what ETN's going to be. And you're like, great, with ETN, I spent a second-round pick on ETN.
Right.
McLaughlin is free in, over 60% of Yahoo leagues.
Yep. The good thing about McLaughlin is they're going to be in third down a lot.
Yes, they are.
Because they're not going to get first downs on first or second. So I think with the other thing, too, is that with Bo Nix, his average depth of target on Sunday, 6 yards, which was 27th out of the 32 starters. He just didn't look comfortable at all. I think there's going to be a lot of short stuff, a lot of dump-offs. And, yeah, this might be the new PPR Alvin Kamara Ponzi scheme, is the Jaleel McLaughlin scheme.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully. Listen, they did not play well against Seattle. Give credit to the Seahawks. The Seahawks line played awesome. They were just dominating Denver. And the schedule doesn't get any easier. Steelers this week, that's not easy. Then they're on the road at Tampa Bay. That ain't easy. They're at your New York Jets.
See if the Jets figured it out by then.
Hopefully the Jets figure out their run defense by then. Then they're home to Las Vegas. So it's not a great schedule coming up, but to your point about being in negative game script and having to throw, yeah, I do think, I don't know that I'm starting Jaleel McLaughlin this week unless you're in a stupid 18-team league like I was, but I do think that...
Key thing, you were in the 18-team
I was,
league.
past tense, yeah, exactly. I'm in 10 guillotine leagues. Well, now 9. I'm now in 9. What are you going to do? That's why they call it fantasy football. This is why I'm so bitter at Drake London and Christian Kirk. They effed me so hard. And Mark Andrews effed me right up the.
This is quite the roster.
Right up the chuckle hole. Yeah, just like he just 1,000%. It was just the whole team, every single team.
Oh no, not
my
the
team
chuckle
finished
hole.
45 points below
So long,
expectations. Right, my team finished 45 points below projected. It was unbelievable. Every single big name player that disappointed, they were on my now dead.
If anyone wants to
league.
change their fantasy team name to Mark Andrews, F me right up the chuckle hole.
It's
That
out there.
That could be a league winner.
Yeah. That would have won the best team names. That segment already passed.
You
boy.
guys never heard that phrase?
Oh, that was good. Definitely haven't heard it on air. That's
Put it
for
on a
sure.
bumper sticker.
By the way, just quickly before we move on, it's off topic, but I need to change the topic. Bo Nix average depth of target 6 yards. Anthony Richardson 17.3.
Yeah.
It's just completely insane.
Bo Nix looks awful.
Different
But
sports.
again, we heard reports throughout the preseason that Jaleel McLaughlin was going to get a bigger role in this offense, that he wasn't just a third down. Like, he's got tremendous speed. The fact that they were running him between the tackles, they didn't do much with him, right? But because they couldn't move the ball at all. But the fact that they were running between the tackles, that he got more rushing attempts than Javonte Williams in game one, I think really there's a chance that McLaughlin, and I think it's a better than average chance, that he takes over this backfield, that he becomes the Kamara for Sean Payton, if you will, and Javonte Williams is more of the Mark Ingram. Different players, obviously,
Right.
but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and I know that one of your bold predictions, Connor, is that at some point Audric Estime takes over I have a lot of Audric Estime in like dynasty leagues and deeper leagues as well.
Yeah, it could flip where Estime's kind of that early down runner. And you're right, Matthew. Like, McLaughlin's role is solidified. There's no one else in this backfield that's going to do what he does, and that's the pass catching role where, let's be real, Bo Nix is going to be a check down merchant the entire season. Yep. So our other running back on this list for us, guys, really interesting depending on injury updates. Zach Charbonnet against the Patriots, 53% available here. Seahawks coach Mike McDonald said yesterday there's no injury update on Kenneth Walker. We're waiting for one. He had the abdomen injury. He's had abdominal injuries in the past. He's had injuries in the past. Just one of those situations you want to keep an eye on. Matthew, if we hear eventually that Kenneth Walker is going to miss some time or could be limited, what does that do for Charbonnet in these rankings?
He's an RB1. He's a low end. He's a top 12 fantasy running back as well. Look, in his 3 games as the lead back last year, that was weeks 11 through 13. He averaged over 19 touches a game. He played 77% of the snaps. He looked the part. Scored a touchdown on Sunday as well. Look, we like Kenneth Walker more. The Seahawks do as well. If Kenneth Walker's healthy, he's the guy you want. But we think the Seahawks offense is going to be pretty good this year. And if Walker were to miss time, Charbonnet is somebody that we have confidence in would be successful in a lead role for Seattle.
Yep, and it's a tough matchup against the Patriots if he is the starter for that one. Patriots had top 2 run defense last season, but at the same time, like, it's the Patriots. The Patriots aren't going to be on the field for 35 minutes. Even if it's not efficient, he would get a lot of usage. And I think the bigger picture thing is just like, Ken Walker is hurt all the time. Even when he's not missing time, he's still hurt. Just constantly dealing with these different things.
Seems like he's always on the injury report.
Yes, and even he gets out there and he plays and he guts through it a lot of the time, but I think that might lead them to not making him the workhorse that was talked about in the preseason with Charbonnet. I mean, they spent a second-round pick on him 2 years ago, so I think that he is someone certainly that they're confident in and that they will use if they have to.
Some lower-tier targets here,
By the way,
guys.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, who should have had a monster game against Denver, also effed me up the chuckle hole. Stay on that same team.
Let's just add him to the chuckle hole list.
All right, some lower-tier
You know what's
waiver
great?
targets.
Can I tell you what's great? Pete does literally 1 day a week. Pete, backup producer
And
Pete.
chuckle holes come out on the Pete
yeah,
day.
Yeah.
Like, poor Pete. Like, literally, he does other jobs here.
a lot of
he's
things.
a big part of, all jokes aside, he's a big part of Football Night in America, what we do on Sunday nights as well. He works very closely with Chris Sims, does a lot of stuff with Unbuttoned and Pro Football Talk as well. And so just 1 day a week, they make him slum with us, this poor guy. And then, this guy's going to have to spend a lot of time in the editing room and then in human resources filling out forms.
Yes.
And like, poor Pete. I apologize.
He'll be
Pete.
working on
I
this
really
show
do.
for the next 24 hours.
Exactly. This poor guy.
Some lower tier waiver targets. Rookie running back Bucky Irving on the Bucks. He's got the Lions this week. 79% available. He got 9 carries for 62 yards. Also caught 2 passes. And then Alexander Mattison in this Raiders backfield. 96% available. 5 carries, 19 yards. But he did catch 4 passes and, more importantly, caught a touchdown, Matthew.
He did. I mean, I think he's going to be the passing down back. Minshew certainly more likely to check down.
Dylan Lobby not active in this game.
Exactly. I like Lobby in Dynasty, but for right now, it looks like even though you don't like Alexander Mattison, even though I don't like Alexander Mattison, Con or Jay, none of us like Alexander Mattison, but
Pierce
who
does.
apparently does? Antonio Pierce apparently does.
He does.
And that's all that matters. And so Zamir White is never going to be a pass catcher. He never has been, I think, for his career, a less than 2% target share. So to the extent that you think the Raiders are going to be a negative, neutral or negative game script, which I think is a fair assessment to make, Alexander Madison's going to have more value than, candidly, he has any right to as well. And, I mean, I don't think Zamir White is all that great. So there's a chance he overtakes this role. I want to go back here, though, to Bucky Irving. I felt like Bucky Irving, similar to Tank Bigsby here, Connor, that I thought just to the eye test, he looked like the better running back than Rachaad White out there against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, he can catch the ball. He's a little bit, he didn't test that great, but he's always looked better in pads. He's a tackle breaker. He's got good contact balance despite being a smaller running back. The Bucs really, really like him. They got to see a lot of him this summer. They elevated him throughout the summer. So I'm not going to say it's ready to be like this split backfield full time, but they want Bucky Irving to be a big part of this rotation.
Yep. And I'll say, like, to me, this is the Cam Akers corollary from last year, right? When you have a guy who seems entrenched as a workhorse back, but they're not actually amazing. Like guys like Zamir White, Javonte Williams, Rachaad White, feels like their backfield. Doesn't take much for it to not be their backfield anymore.
Yeah, none of them have the draft capital or the long-term success in the NFL where you're like, all right, well, that guy's,
entrenched.
He's entrenched. None of those guys feel like they are entrenched for sure.
How about some insurance running backs here? This is Matthew's top insurance running backs. Tyler Algier, Braylon Allen, Ty Chandler, Ray Davis. And then Jalen Wright becomes very interesting as it's already only 1 week into the season. Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert both dealing with some injuries. They'd be estimated as non-participants in practice. Not ready to elevate Wright yet, but he's somebody to keep an eye on this year.
He definitely is. And I think he's the type of guy who there's two guys in front of him, but it just takes an injury to one of them for Jalen Wright to become fantasy viable because of the type of player he is, because he's playing in perhaps the most explosive offense in football, certainly in the top 5, and we know how exciting of a talent that he is. And like Mostert is hurt all the time. Achane has been hurt all the time in his young career, so certainly there's scope for Jalen Wright to become the thing. Jalen Wright's going to have a game where he's going to lead off our Tuesday segment, where at some point in the season
we'll have a Jordan Mason game.
Yeah, there's no question. And I was going to say, we're going to get into Jordan Mason here later in the show when we talk about last night's game. But if ever there was, Exhibit A, like, why do you want an insurance running back? Like, ask anyone that had Christian McCaffrey about ready to go last night, didn't have Jordan Mason on their team, and wasn't able to go get them, and how that worked out for them.
Should have got Alan
Lazard. Right? I mean, but that's also, well, we'll get into that. Like, but that's why, by the way, when you're setting your lineup, why McCaffrey should have been in your flex spot, not your running back spot. Again, to give you that flexibility. Always set your lineup towards, based on the schedule, right? The Sunday night game, the Monday night game, those should be the guys in your flex so that you have that you have some flexibility there. But when you are in large field tournaments, I believe in trying to get backups of other players' teams so that you can try to upside. But when you're a 10, 12 team league, 14 team league, get the backups to your guys because it's so hard to, again, if you lost Christian McCaffrey, there's no one on the waiver wire. You know what I mean? Maybe you can get J.K. Dobbins or whatever, but generally speaking, you're better off just protect if you know who the backup's going to be and you feel confident that they would be productive, the way that we feel like Algier or Ray Davis or some of these guys that Jalen Wright would be, they're important to have on your roster.
Let's move over to wide receivers, and let's look at, of course, the Roto-World player news for wide receivers with Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua. He's placed on IR. He's got a PCL sprain, so, big things ahead already for Cooper Kupp in terms of just being a target monster. Roma Dunze week to week with an MCL sprain. So two very talented wide receivers now going to be down and out for a little while.
Massive fantasy impact with Nacua, not as much with Odunze. Yeah. Although, Keenan Allen, who already got a ton of targets, in DJ Moore.
Keep it rolling.
Yeah, keep it rolling. You expect them to even increase their target share, but Nacua just an awful break for somebody that was banged up in the preseason, that was drafted, inside the top 20 in almost every fantasy draft out there. And so now we expect a larger role for certainly DeMarcus Robinson. Played 92% of the snaps in week 1. He got 7 targets. That was tied for second on the team. Remember, the Rams love to run 11 personnel.
Yep.
Last year, they ran it more than any other team in the NFL. They ran it 100% of the snaps in week number 1. And so it's going to be Cooper Kupp. It's going to be DeMarcus Robinson. And maybe we'll see either some Tyler Johnson or Tutu Atwell. We're still waiting to see sort of how that all play out. But in terms of how he ended the season last year, in terms of what he did in week 1, in terms of the amount of snaps he played, and that DeMarcus Robinson, when he's gotten a shot, has been productive. To me, he would be the pickup to replace Nacua until, maybe we'll see some Colby Parkinson as well. He's the tight end, and how they distribute the passing game. But Robinson, to me, who's 94% available in Yahoo leagues, to me, he'd be the pickup to get to replace Puka Nacua with. But there are some other guys we like a little bit more.
Yeah, Jay, how about Greg Dortch? They're kind of a no-show for Marvin Harrison Jr. in his NFL
Dortch.
debut, but Dortch, the slot receiver for Kyler Murray, 6 catches, 47 yards. He also got a carry for 4 yards as well.
Yep, gets a favorable matchup against the Rams too. Questions about their defense post-Aaron Donald era. Trade Davius White did not look fantastic, getting burned by Jameson Williams. Now Dortch is going to be more in the slot, but this is a vulnerable defense for the Rams. And I think there's just uncertainty with the Cardinals because we penciled in, Marvin Harrison was set on DraftKings 65.5 receiving yards. He gets 1 catch. We think Marvin Harrison is going to get more of a workload. He kind of has to, but how much more of a workload? Is he actually going to be a 70 yards per game guy? Or is perhaps they're going to be more growing pains and he's more 40-50 for a while? We just don't know, and Dortch can soak up some of that uncertainty.
Matthew, Jerry Jeudy. Oh, you want to?
I was just going to say that, I talked about this in the preseason multiple times, that Greg Dortch, for all the jokes about the human Dortch and everything, going to be a thing this year. The fact of the matter, targeted on a team high 31% of his routes. He's had 9 career games with 7 or more targets. He's averaging over 14 fantasy points per game as well. The other thing that's interesting here, there's a real connection between Dortch and Kyler Murray. And if you saw how bad that line played, the Cardinals' offensive line, it's one of the reasons I like Kyler Murray as my ride or die, is because I feel like he's going to be running for his life and he's going to get you those rushing yards, over 50 rushing yards for Murray against the Bills. But the other thing is that he's having to bail out of routes quickly. He's having to, and that's Dortch, who's around the line of scrimmage. They're force feeding the ball. They're giving him a couple of different shots. Towards the end, by the way, they took a deep shot to him, which was crazy. He ain't Marvin Harrison. He ain't Trey McBride. The touchdown equity isn't going to be there for Greg Dortch. But if you're in a PPR league where you start 3 wide receivers, Greg Dortch is going to be usable.
Next up, Jerry Jeudy on the Browns. And I know what you're thinking right away. Deshaun Watson does not look good. The Browns have some of their own problems. But, Matthew, this has to be a matchup one against Jacksonville's defense. And he's 55% available.
He had almost a 19% target share against the Cowboys. That was second most on the team. 2 end zone targets, which is crazy. One of the issues of Jerry Jeudy is that he just never scores touchdowns. But here you go in week 1, new team, new quarterback, scores a touchdown. So maybe the issues that plagued him in terms of scoring in Denver might be solved a little bit here in Cleveland. It's worth noting that only one team in the NFL allowed more yards to opposing wide receivers in week 1 than the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so, yeah, their run game is a little bit banged up. Jerome Ford didn't look great. I think that Jeudy suddenly becomes kind of interesting, but it's just like, if you're telling me like he's going to get a 20% target share, like talented player, maybe it's a late bloomer for Jerry Jeudy.
A strong week 1 for Brandin Cooks, Jay, and a Dallas wide receiver.
It gets ugly quick, as you see.
Yes. In a really weak Dallas wide receiver room. Jake Ferguson now banged up as well. Cooks 4 for 40 and a touchdown. And available in 67% of leagues.
Yep, 23% target share, just as CeeDee Lamb continues to ramp up. Someone else has to catch passes for this team, and just playing at home in a dome against New Orleans coming up. Like Brandin Cooks is one of the most kind of unexciting names because he's been around for so long. Brandin Cooks is only 30 years old. He's younger than Cooper Kupp. It feels like he's been around for a million years, but he's just kind of safe, unremarkable production. And with Ferguson, looks like Ferguson's going to give it a go probably and try play through it, but surely he will be reduced somewhat. And Brandin Cooks is just going to give you these games where it's like 5 for 49 and some chance at a touchdown. So that can be valuable in a flex spot in deeper leagues.
Shocking given his size, but he has very quietly scored in 6 of his last 8 games dating back to last year, Brandin Cooks.
Yeah, him and Dak, the timing is there for Cooks. All right, how about some other wide receiver waiver targets? A little bit lower down the list. Giants wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson against your Commanders, Matthew. If you saw the opening of the show, you know what that secondary looks like. 98% available. Did have 6 catches and even a rush for 14 yards week 1.
I've been waiting for Wan'Dale Robinson for like 3 years.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he might, similar to Dortch, just kind of a PPR cheat code because Daniel Jones,
There's not a lot.
There's not a lot there.
Offense right now. And Brian Dable really does like him. Bengals wide receiver Andre Yosivas against the Chiefs. 88% available. 3 catches, 26 yards. And then Alec Pierce, who caught that bomb from Anthony Richardson. Only 3 catches, but 125 yards and a touchdown. They got Green Bay.
He's the deep threat on a team that is going to be throwing deep, and he had a strong camp, and it paid off, in week number 1. So Pierce is on the list.
Jay, a couple of rookie wide receivers to monitor here. Xavier Legette had 4 catches for 35 yards. Not much from Adonai Mitchell, but we'll see as Josh Downs is still out. He might still play a lot for the Colts. Jalen McMillan, 1 catch for 32 yards. We know Godwin and Evans get so much work in that offense. Devon Vale, 8 catches, 39 yards. Jalen Polk, 1 catch for 6 yards. So a lot of these guys, we're just waiting for them to get more opportunity, it feels like.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of production, Vale was the guy. But Xavier Legette is somewhat interesting to me. I'm kind of surprised he got that much run. But I think with Legette, just the Panthers are going to be throwing a ton. This is probably, I think this is the worst team in the NFL. And Legette is going to be out there getting run.
All right, let's move over to tight ends. This is a big one at the top here in Isaiah Likely. And it's, 9 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown. You said this, Matthew. It could be his best game of the year. We don't know. But more importantly, he's involved in this offense even when Mark Andrews is out there and healthy. That's the most important takeaway.
Yeah, look, I going back and watching the tape, and I want to give a shout out to my buddy Andy Holloway, who on Twitter put together a great breakdown of everything like that. So shout out to Andy. But in essence, he was bracketed on every single play Mark Andrews was.
They took him out of the game.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't think that's always going to be the case. especially because, and a lot of the stuff to Isaiah likely was just sort of underneath stuff, and they were under pressure and it's kind of dump off sort of stuff. That's why Justice Hill also got a bunch of run here. They sort of, they played back a lot. But the fact of the matter is that it's not a fluke, because we've known for a long time since he's gotten drafted how talented Isaiah Likely is. And I think the most important thing about Likely was how much he played snaps. Like, he played 70% of the snaps, Connor. Last year when Mark Andrews was active, he played 22% of the snaps. We talked about this in the preseason about how the rumors were they were going to go to 12 personnel a lot more this year in year 2 of Todd Monken, that they wanted to get both Likely and Andrews, 2 of their playmakers, on the field. And you see this all the time when it comes to football players. That genie ain't going back in the bottle. That toothpaste isn't going back in the tube. After Isaiah Likely has a performance like this, he's going to be out there if he's healthy, and it looks like he avoided major injury as well. I think he's the number 1 tight end pickup, because I think he's going to have a productive fantasy role even if Andrews is healthy. And obviously, there's an argument to be made that if Andrews goes down, he's the number 1 tight end in fantasy.
Yes.
Like, he's right there with Laporta and McBride, Kelsey.
Yep. This week, see the number 1 pickup over Jordan Mason. Just given that Jordan Mason's role should expire in the next couple
of
weeks.
Of it, yeah.
But Jordan Mason could be number 1 running back in fantasy for 2 weeks.
I think Jordan Mason's the number 1 pickup, because for 2 reasons. Number 1 is that, again, if McCaffrey, Jordan Mason can win you your league, right? I mean, even if you knew Mark Andrews was out for the year, Likely is like a possibly top 1 tight end, possibly top 5. He'd be an elite fantasy tight end, but Jordan Mason, in that McCaffrey role, could win you your league. Yeah. Likely would be just a very good fantasy tight end. Here's the other thing, is that I believe that in terms of just thinking about roster construction, Jordan Mason has more value to the rest of the league than Isaiah Likely. Yep. That you would be able to hold whoever has McCaffrey in your league hostage
yes.
if you have Jordan Mason, in a way that you can't with Likely and Andrews. So I would put Mason over Likely, but make no mistake, Isaiah Likely needs to be rostered in 100% of leagues.
Some other tight end waiver targets lower down the list. You mentioned Colby Parkinson before, Matthew, especially with a little bit of a target opening in this Rams offense. Jay, I mean, Puka Nacua now down on IR. Somebody else has to catch the ball besides Cooper Kupp.
Absolutely, and this is going to be a role long-term because of the injury to Tyler Higbee. Stafford seemed to have a rapport with Colby Parkinson. There's a very real chance Colby Parkinson is the number 2 guy in an offense that's run by Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. So I think Colby Parkinson should be rostered everywhere.
Juwan Johnson catches the touchdown, 2 catches, 26 yards. A guy that's helped you win a league in the past, Matthew.
Yeah, he is. Take that, stupid Dev. Just a reminder. You tried to get cute. Didn't work out. We love Juwan Johnson here. Look, 4 of the past 5 weeks dating back to last season, Juwan Johnson very quietly has finished as a top 12 tight end. Early returns look like the Saints offense is going to be more competent than years past. It was unbelievable to see how much motion Clint Kubiak used with the Saints. After they were dead last in that last year, they were top 3 in the NFL this past week. So on the road at Dallas, they're going to have to be throwing quite a bit. So Juwan Johnson suddenly becomes kind of interesting. And listen, it was not pretty for the Commanders' passing attack, but you and I talked about Diami Brown, 15 yards. This is way too low. Actually, it was way too high. I mean, what are you going to do? But the fact is that after Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz is currently the number 2 passing option for the Commanders. He actually tied for the team lead in targets. Giants, Bengals, Cardinals, Browns are the next 4 for Washington. None of them scare you in terms of tight ends. As long as Zach Ertz is healthy, he's going to reluctantly be a thing for my Commanders.
Let's move over to the quarterbacks here. And Jay, you and Baker Mayfield pretty good friends.
We are great friends, me, Baker, and Matthew Berry as well. We're also, the 3 of us are friends.
Is that him
Matthew's
in the picture?
In the photo,
Half of my face made it into this one.
No,
half of my face. And what I like is that, well, maybe you did something different, but I feel like I saw it earlier. You tagged me in that one, so
yes.
People get right. Exactly. And then I don't know what it is,
Wow,
Connor.
this is a bad trend, Matthew.
Dude, why do people keep cutting me out of photos? So Mike Florio, who I thought I was good with, I know Jay and I have a thing, but I thought Florio and I were boys.
And that's a clean crop. You
Then
would never know in a
on the
million
other
years you're
side.
in the room.
We did a thing for football. That's the actual photo right there. There you see it. We did this thing for social for Football Night in America. Me, Florio, and Jason, kind of first day at school, whatever. And Florio, for some reason, go back to the tweet, Pete. Florio, for some reason, crops me out of the picture, which he didn't need to. The whole point of his tweet was that he's tall, that he's clear and obvious evidence that he's not 5'3". I'm 6'1".
Right.
I'm between 6 foot and 6'1", and so you see in that photo that we showed earlier, like it shows that Florio's right there.
He could have used you.
He could have used me to make the point. I don't understand. I don't understand why he's out of the blue. He sends a tweet about his height. That one makes no sense to me either.
Yeah,
But
to be honest with you, I don't know where that came from.
But if you're gonna do the tweet, like the photo is me, Garrett, and Florio.
Right.
I thought Florio and I were good.
Picture.
I've helped promote Son of Mine and Father of Mine, his books available now.
There goes that.
ProFootballTalk.com. No, don't. Don't buy them. Yeah.
Forget promoting it. Do not buy.
Burn them, in fact. Please.
Buy them only to send them back.
Amazon return system, very easy. Very easy. They give you a
I
little
haven't
code.
read the books. I'm sure they're great. Mike's a really good writer. But I thought we were boys. And, what's going on? Thank you,
know.
Connor.
Okay.
You're the only one who doesn't cut me out of photos.
Yes.
No, we have great pictures at my wedding,
Yes.
and I have kept you in them.
Thank you very much.
on
This is
purpose.
true. This is true. This is why I root for you and Kristen.
This is
And
Cheer for the demise of
why-
me and Mike Florio's
Yeah,
respective
exactly.
marriages.
Pretty much.
That's why I still
Pretty
get to
much.
sit at this desk.
Yeah. Tell Sophia that when she wants an upgrade,
Yeah.
I can hook her up.
Okay.
I'll wingman for her.
I'll let her know that.
Please do.
I'll let her know that.
Please do.
So quarterbacks. Jay, we get to start with your man, Baker Mayfield. Available in 65% of leagues after he shredded the Commanders for 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I don't want to make a trend of speaking down to guys that I share photos with on Twitter, but I wouldn't overreact too much to this performance against the Commanders secondary because it may well be the worst in the entire NFL. And the thing about Baker Mayfield is that when he has a clean pocket, his entire career, when he has a clean pocket, he will dice you up, particularly when there is just no resilience on the back end from the Commanders and he can just chuck it up to Mike Evans. So look, Baker Mayfield, I think he's a very known, established commodity at this point. He is a good NFL quarterback. He is not the elite guy week to week that he was last week. I think you can project with confidence every week what Baker Mayfield's going to do. We're not going to say last week that much, but he's going to be viable in certain matchups.
And by the way, if you lost Jordan Love, you might be in the market for a quarterback. I agree with you, might be his best game of the year, but on the road at Detroit, they're probably going to have to throw to keep up with the Lions. We don't know yet the injury status of Russell Wilson. I feel like that when Wilson comes back, he's going to be the starter.
Yeah.
But for now, Justin Fields is the starter of the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road at Denver. And again, those rushing yards just give you fantasy points. It was an up and down day for Justin Fields, but if you need a quarterback, again, you lost Jordan Love, or I don't think I would want to start Kirk Cousins until I saw it. Like, he looked awful.
He can't move.
He can't
move.
He can't move. Like, Cousins looked terrible. So if I went into the season with Cousins, I would not want to. I would not want to deal with that. So certainly Fields, who had 14 rushing attempts in week number 1. I mean, you remember Geno had the long run against the Broncos last week as well. Broncos defense didn't inspire a ton of confidence. So Fields is somebody that could be a viable streamer this week.
They'll probably have the ball a lot as well. If you're in a super flex league, a 2-quarterback league, here's a couple targets for you. Sam Darnold, of course, the big week against the Giants. He's got the Niners, Houston, Green Bay, and then the Jets in the London game. But Sam Darnold looks really confident, Jay, in Kevin O'Connell's offense.
He was magnificent against the Giants. I understand that the Giants, the perception is their defense isn't great. I think their defense is actually going to be okay longer term.
Fine.
But he was awesome. He didn't even have to use the connection to Justin Jefferson too much, and he was still able to put up a fantasy viable day. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Sam Darnold has a better year than Kirk Cousins based on what they showed in week 1. Don't want to overreact, but certainly think that's in play.
Yeah, definitely within the range of outcomes as well. And because they're playing my Commanders, I do have to mention Sam Darnold. I'm sorry, not Sam Darnold. Daniel Jones. Again, Sam Darnold lit them up in week 1, lit up the Giants, and now the Giants get a revenge, get a better matchup here against my Commanders, who, as you saw with my master thespian acting at the beginning of the show, turning a turnstile defense. I'm all discombobulated. I'm up the chuckle hole. What are you going to do?
And if
anyway,
you need
Daniel Jones might be a viable 2-quarterback team league guy.
If you need a defense, here's a couple that are available out there. Mike McDonald's unit, the Seahawks, looking good. They got the Patriots, which the Patriots pull off the upset win, but the offense through the air wasn't doing too much. The Chargers against the Panthers, what more needs to be said about that matchup? And Jacksonville against Deshaun Watson's Browns.
Browns gave up 6 sacks in week number 1. Watson also threw 2 interceptions, so the Jags, who held the Dolphins in check for a while there until they all turned it on there as well. Yeah, start whatever defense is against the Panthers. They just look brutal. And it's worth noting that no team had a higher pressure rate in Week 1 than Mike McDonald's Seattle Seahawks. So on the road at Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots, that's a nice defense as well.
Dominate the season with the Fantasy Life Plus subscription and get weekly rankings, start, sit, DFS, and betting tools. Use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off. Go to fantasylife.com/RotoWorld to learn more.
Yeah, if you want to send your opponents right up the chuckle hole, this is the tool you use.
We're taking our first break. When we're back, Jets 49ers recap. Everybody's making fun of me today at work. I have nothing to say about the game.
7-minute drive, under center, Purdy for the Niners. From the 5 of the Jets, second down goal. Gets the snap, handoff, Mason over the right tackle, touchdown. Broken tackle at the goal line. And Karam's off that body in for a 5-yard San Francisco touchdown run. And the Niners build their lead on a long drive, the first one of the second half. 22-7, the Niners.
Hey, Connor. When Jordan Mason ran to the end zone on that clip right there and started thrusting his hips, what do you think he meant towards the Jets? What do you think was going on there?
Might have been a little ode maybe to D-Generation X and WWF. I don't know.
Wow.
Can't say it on air, but big night for Jordan Mason. Also, big night if you didn't have a backup plan for Christian McCaffrey, saving your bacon.
Life is a tweet from our own Jay Croucher. Life is so much better, happier. I can be a better father than my daughters because in every league I drafted CMC, I also reached for Jordan Mason.
It was a sweat-free Monday night in the Croucher household. Loves watching Jay Mason go to work. And then we have a tweet from First and Football to me. I've got a sick best friend who makes it his life's mission every year to grab the backup to every running back I draft. Every year he does this knowing I'll have to go to him for my backup. He literally took Mason in the 9th round just to have him so I couldn't. Half his team are backups.
Who's laughing now, though?
Yeah, genius.
Who's laughing now?
That's
because
genius.
unlike that guy that reached for Jordan Mason, the uninsured CMC managers drink free.
I mean, we feel bad for them. Like that was a brutal beat. It's super. I mean, like all sorts of stuff.
Do you? We spent 4 weeks on this show saying if you take CMC, you have to take Jordan Mason.
Yes, true. But we have, and Jordan Mason was on 10 lists of 10, and anyway, and we talked about him a lot in the preseason. I've written about him as well, and
it's
we
tough
were like,
break,
and
though.
especially when Elijah Mitchell went down for the year, and you knew Jordan Mason could be the guy, and McCaffrey was dealing with it with the injury, but still. Feel bad for people. There's one guy that I don't feel bad. He's in my league. So I'm in another different guillotine league. Can I just tell you this story? This guy, as we watch this Jordan Mason run all over your Jets. What happened to your Jets defense? I thought Robert Saleh was supposed to be a defensive genius.
Turns out Kyle Shanahan had a plan for his former DC. They didn't have an answer last night.
He was just like, do you think Kyle Shanahan was just like, it's a good thing you quit because I want to fire you. Again, this is embarrassing. It's awful.
Wasn't great.
All right, so I'm in a guillotine league. Very quick. No, it's a quick story, but it's worth it. I'm in a guillotine league. There's like 4 of us that were all potentially on the chopping block. And this guy who's in the league, a little abrasive. He's a little abrasive. And so he starts sending group emails to everyone just like, oh, look how crappy Barry's team is. Hey, everyone make your bids on who's you're going to pick out of Barry's team, everything like
Very
that.
good.
Yeah, good.
Very
just say good luck in the second chance league, Barry, everything. So anyway, they're just kind of like they're piling on to me. And I'm not saying anything because I'm like, I still got Garrett Wilson going. I think I'm okay. One of the 4 guys is done, and this one guy had Christian McCaffrey. And so, anyway, he's talking trash the entire weekend. I'm not saying anything. And it just goes to show you, fantasy karma is a real thing. The fantasy gods sometimes smile down on those who pay attention and smite those that
puff their chest
a little bit too much. Because what happens, this guy didn't have Jordan Mason. McCaffrey gets everyone else on his team had already played. There was nothing he could do, no one that he could drop to pick up McCaffrey. So he had to take a 0 for McCaffrey. Garrett Wilson gets the 12 points I need, and I survive, as do the other 3.
Did he get knocked out?
That guy died. His season's over.
Peak egg on the face moment.
It's amazing. It's unbelievable. It's fantastic. Here's what I will tell you about Jordan Mason. He's very, very good. There are reports out there. There's a chance that McCaffrey could miss week 2 as well. Again, this is why he's the number 1 pickup in fantasy, because you don't want to start 0-2, and if you're a McCaffrey manager and you don't have Mason and somebody else grabs Mason, then you're just sort of like, I mean, I don't know how that would be possible, because I would assume once you heard the news, You ran to the waiver wire, but for whatever
Just
reason.
quickly on the Jets side of the ball, wouldn't worry too much about Breece Hall. He got 100% of the Jets running back touches. He was out there, 97% snap rate through 3 quarters. They kept him in towards the end so he could cash my over 15.5 rushing attempts. I would not be worried at all about Aaron Rodgers. Also, not worried at all about Brock Purdy, even though the stats weren't amazing. I thought they both looked incredible.
They're both fine.
Yeah, they both look great.
Niners side of the ball, I know disappointing day, obviously, for Brandon Ayuk, just under 5 fantasy points. Played 60% of the snaps, but listen, if he catches that touchdown, which he should have, it was a perfect bunt. I think Ayuk's day looks different. Purdy's day looks different. Debo was Debo. Kittle was fine. Obviously, they didn't need to throw much because they just ran every single play. Your Jet, I'm telling you, like, your Jets, that was brutal.
Why would you
embarrassing? Apologize for the Jets.
Yeah. No, Connor was texting me about the Mets.
On the show yesterday, I picked the Niners to win on this desk. I don't know if either of you did.
I like the Jets.
So I'm not apologizing to anyone.
The under did not. The under did not.
No, Tyler Conklin was a ghost.
No Tyler Conklin.
Very fun best
That's all
bets.
right. I won.
Yeah.
There we go.
I won and the Mets won.
By the way, the under should have cashed as well. Like
It went over by 8 points.
Yeah. I thought the Jets could play defense. Connor told me the Jets could play defense. They can't.
Pass defense.
I thought the Panthers should have beat the Saints.
Forgot a keyword. Pass defense. We're taking our last break. When we're back to the futures. Our favorite award bets coming up next. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets instantly, plus get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's time for last call. Back to the futures. Oh, yeah. Courtesy of our friends at DraftKings.
Yes, sir.
Jay, what's in the crystal ball today?
Okay, so Kyle Shanahan, Coach of the Year, plus 3,500. I think I'm just going to keep backing this every year until me or Kyle Shanahan is dead. Plus 650, I make it that the Niners win 15-plus games. If they do that, I think Kyle Shanahan has a very good chance to finally win this award for the first time.
Listen,
I'm going crazy that he never has.
It's ridiculous. You can't be 35-1.
He somehow doesn't get the credit he deserves.
He went undefeated with Brock Purdy.
That's ridiculous.
Who was his
Should've
third
won that
quarterback.
year.
I mean, like that year, that was the year where, like,
This is the year, Kyle.
Stefanski won it with Joe Flacco. Like,
Don't
Brock
talk to
Purdy
me
was
about
a
Joe
harder, I would argue. Yeah, anyway.
Listen, I'm going Offensive Rookie of the Year. I'm still taking Malik Nabers. It's plus 1,400. Get it while you can. The quarterbacks did not look good. A quarterback should not win this award this year. Malik Nabers, I think, will be the best player in this Offensive Rookie class.
J.K. Dobbins for Comeback Player of the Year. He's 12-1. Wanted to take DeMar Hamlin to troll you.
DeMar Hamlin wins.
J.K. Dobbins, what a great story. Looked awesome. Give me J.K. Dobbins for Comeback Player of the Year, which has to be about an injury. It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay, for Connor, and chuckle holes everywhere, I'm merely Matthew Barry. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Barry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.